Okay, now let's look at the type 2 problems, which are your and problems. So these are your where they overlap. And this is what your graph is going to look like. Instead of going off in different directions, you're going to have one segment. All right? And this is because it started off with these going in towards each other, and this is the overlap. All right, so that's why it's an and. Now, how would you write this as an inequality? We'll start with each endpoint. Your first endpoint here is -2, and we have a picture of all the numbers that are greater than or equal to -2, since it's a solid dot. Now, put the word and we're going to have what? An open dot here, so that means which direction do the numbers go? To the left. So this time we have x is less than 5, okay? So you're just writing a separate inequality from each endpoint. All right, if I want to put this in interval notation, then that's even easier. Go back to your line segment. Where does it start? It starts with a closed dot at -2, and then it stops at 4 with an open dot. So that's all your interval is going to look like. Now, set notation is going to be your brace, x, such that x, and you just come up here, is greater than or equal to -2, and x is less than 5, okay? Now, there is a way, these are the ones I told you, if you have an or, it's always going to have the word or, but you can have an and without having the word and how does that work? Well, let's take this example again. If I take x is less than or, x is greater than or equal to -2, and x is less than 5, there's a way you can smoosh this together into one equation. Now, what I do is I take the one that has the number that's going to be furthest to the left. And that's going to be this. -2 is further to the left than +5. So I'm going to take that one and I'm going to invert it. All right? I'm going to rewrite it as -2. Now remember to flip your sign. -2 is less than or equal to x. Then I'm going to leave this one just like it is. Now if you could picture it that you're smooshing them together, you can write this with x in the center. Just like this. This is also an and or an intersection problem, okay? So flip the one with the number that is the smallest or the furthest to the left and then smoosh them together so that you only have one x instead of 2. Okay, let's look at number 7 here, and it is joined by and, so we're going to solve, graph, and write in interval notation. So let's start with this one. I'll subtract 3 from each side. So 2x is greater than -12, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, so x is greater than -6. Okay, over here, I'm going to add 2 to each side, so 8x is less than 32. Divide both sides by 8, and x is less than 4. Okay, if we put this on a number line, x is greater than -6, it's going to be open circle, and it's going to go that direction. Then when I put this one on the number line, it's going to be open circle and go this direction. See, that overlap is where your solution is. And if you wanted to write this in smooshed form, which number is the smallest? This one. So you could flip this, invert it, to be -6 is less than x, and then just leave this x off. That gives you the condensed form of the two. Otherwise, you have to use the word and in there. All right, now to put this in interval notation, look at your graph. You've got an open circle, so that's a parenthesis, -6, comma. You've got an open circle at 4, so there's your interval. Okay, here's number 8. So let's come over here to the left-hand side and let's just start solving. First, we're going to subtract 1 from each side. So 2w is less than or equal to 10. Divide both sides by 2, and w is less than or equal to 5. All right, over here, I'm going to subtract 1 from each side. So now I have negative 5w is less than 40. Then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. W, I got to flip my sign, and what will be negative 8. Okay, so to write this in condensed form, which number is smallest? This one is. So this is the one I'm going to need to invert. I would want to rewrite this as negative 8 is less than W. Flip the whole thing. Now this is going to be on the left-hand end because it's the smallest, W, and then I would get this one just like it is. So that's condensed form. Now let's graph each of the separate ones. W is less than or equal to 5 would be a solid dot on the 5, and for it to be less than 5, it's going to go this direction. All right, now this one, W is greater than negative 8. I'm going to go to negative 8 right here. I'm going to have an open dot, and since its W is greater than 8, it goes this direction, and you see your overlap here. Okay. Now to put this in interval notation, once you have the graph, it's even easier. So it's an open circle, you're going to need a parenthesis, negative 8, and closed dot will be 5. And that will be a bracket. Okay, on number 9, they give us the problem in condensed form. So, and what you can do, you can split it back up if you want to and solve both of them, but it's pretty easy just to solve it all at one go. You just have to remember, instead of doing the same thing to each side, you have to do the same thing to all 3 parts. So find your variable, and it's right here. What's attached to your variable? The -1. So we're going to get rid of that number. I'm going to add 1 to get rid of it. Now whatever you do to the middle part, you have to do to both the other parts. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1, less than or equal to A, less than or equal to 7. Now we're going to graph this, and it wouldn't be hard to graph it like it is. If it's confusing for you, this is how you split it. Split it right there in the center, just make 2 A's like this. Now this one where the A is not on the left, that's the one you want to flip. So you would rewrite it like that, if that makes it easier for you to graph. If not, I mean, if your numbers are in the right order, the smaller one on the left and the larger one on the right, that is your graph. So we're just going to put a closed dot at -1 and a closed dot at 7, and then that graph will go in between them. Just like that. If you want to graph them separately, you can, or you can go from here. All right, now our interval notation. Since this is a closed dot, we're going to have a bracket at -1, a bracket at +7, and there's your interval. Okay, on number 10, once again, it's condensed, so let's just make sure we do the same thing to all 3 parts. Find your variable. It's on the inside, and we want to get rid of everything attached to it. There's a 4 and a 3. So we're going to go for the 4 first, and anything you do to the middle, you have to do to both ends. Now 4 minus 4 is 0, less than. These two cancel out, so you got 3p, and 19 minus 4 is 15. Now let's get rid of the 3. We're going to divide by 3 here, so whatever we do there, we got to do the other sides. All right, 0 divided by 3 is 0, less than. This makes p less than 5. And since our lesser number is on the left, we're ready to graph. We're going to go to 0, that's going to be an open dot. We're going to go to 5, that's also an open dot, and we're shading the area in between. Now for interval notation, we're going to have a parenthesis, 0, 5, parenthesis. Okay, let's look at number 11 here. Same thing, it's condensed, so let's just work being sure that we do the same thing all the way through. All right, here's our variable. Let's get rid of the -2 first, or the -2. So we're going to do that by adding 2 all the way through. All right, 28 plus 2 is 30, greater than. Those two cancel out. -10m greater than or equal to negative 5. Now we got to get rid of the negative 10. It's multiplied, so we're going to divide. Whatever we do one place, we're going to do all the way through. Now, we are dividing all the way through by a negative number, so you have to flip all the signs. All right, 30 divided by 10 is negative 3. Flip that sign. Negative 10 divided by negative 10 just leaves you the m. We're going to flip this sign. Negative 5 over negative 10 is positive 1/2. And here's your graph. Just make sure that the number on the left is the smaller number. So it is smaller. Negative is always smaller than positive. So when we graph this, all right, the 3 has a less than or greater than sign by it. I mean a less than sign. So we're going to make that an open dot. All right, down here at the 1/2, that's going to be a closed dot, and then we'll graph right in the middle. All right, now for our interval, you've got parenthesis, negative 3, closed dot at 1/2 means you're going to put a bracket. And for number 12, once again, it's condensed, so we'll just go through it doing the same thing to 3 different places. All right, the middle is where my variable is, and the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that negative 2 that it's been divided by. So I'm going to multiply by negative 2 here, so those will cancel out. Whatever you do in one place, you've got to do it in the other 2 places. Now remember, we're multiplying all the way through by a negative number, so we're going to flip all these signs as we go through as well. Negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10. Flip my sign to be greater than or equal to. Now the middle portion is just 12 minus x. I need to flip this sign to greater than, and negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. All right, now let's get rid of the 12. I'm going to subtract 12 to get rid of it. Whatever I do there, I have to do all the way down. All right, 10 minus 12 is negative 2. Now you're not flipping when you subtract. You only flip when you multiply or divide. These 2 cancel out, so I have negative x greater than 4 minus 12 is negative 8. All right, now I have a negative in front of my x, and I don't want that. So you get rid of it by either multiplying or dividing by negative 1. It doesn't matter which one. I just usually multiply by negative 1. Anything you do to one place, you're going to do all the way through. And since we're multiplying through by a negative number, we've got to remember to flip every one of those signs. All right, negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. Flip the sign. Negative 1 times negative x changes that to positive x. Flip the sign. Negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. And here's my interval. Check, be sure that the smaller number is on the left, and it is. So you can just graph this out. 0, it's going to start at 2 with a closed dot and go all the way to 8 where it will have an open dot. Then you'll connect them. All right, the next thing is to write an interval notation. So that 2 has a solid dot. We're going to need a bracket. The other endpoint is at 8, and it'll need parentheses.